Johnny, thanks for coming today. Go ahead.
Good morning. Chairman Huffman and members of the Rules and Reference Committee, my name is Dawn Henry, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning for Oregon City Schools in Oregon, Ohio. Last week, I celebrated my 30th first day of school as an educator. I've taken personal leave time today, actually, to express my strong opposition to House Bill 597. The views expressed this morning spring from my experience as a classroom teacher, a building principal, a special education director, and now a curriculum director. And while our board president agrees with these views, they do not represent our district's official position. Proponents of this bill claim different standards will increase rigor, improve student preparedness, and increase local control. While the goals are commendable, a late game substitution won't help accomplish them. In fact, it has great potential to undermine instructional rigor and inhibit student achievement, all while highly restricting local decision-making. While there are several facets of the bill and the controversy surrounding it that concern me, I'd like to cite one specific provision of the bill to exemplify my concerns. According to analysis provided by the Ohio Legislative Service Commission, House Bill 597 requires, quote, at least 80% of English study focus on imaginative literature, and that at least 80% of the literary works taught in grades 8 through 12 be complete works of classic British and American authors published prior to 1970, and require a choice of literary works be studied solely on the basis of literary merit, rather than popularity or political considerations. I'd like to first address the lack of rigor in House Bill 597's English requirements. A look at the chart below that I've included on this document reveals clearly how this provision could lower rigor and hurt student achievement. While high school literature by American and British authors before 1970 does have great value, it simply does not prepare students for the complex vocabulary and syntax required by the real world. The chart that you see there shows text complexity levels for various types of reading material, as measured by Lexile scores. Lexiles are the units of measure we use to gauge the complexity of text. For example, a simple analysis of a section of House Bill 597 revealed that it's roughly in the 1200 to 1290 range of text complexity. In other words, you need to have roughly the same skills to read a college textbook as you would to read this bill. So if you look at the far left of the chart, you'll see the Lexile score range for high school literature. It's about 740 to 960. To the right, you see the ranges for college literature, high school and college textbooks, military and personal uses, entry-level occupations, and those for the SAT, the ACT, and the AP assessments. I'm sure that you can see my initial concern. If 80% of the English study in grades 8 through 12 is comprised of imaginative literature, text in the lowest range on that chart by a long shot, how are we going to increase our students' ability to read the higher levels of text required after high school? The 20% of informational text students will get to read each year won't be nearly enough to help students acquire the necessary skills that they'll need for higher level reading, such as those needed to read this very bill. I'm also troubled by the hypocrisy for calling for local control and then usurping that control with an overreaching and capricious mandate that demands teachers take a specified amount of time to teach a specified type of text written by a specified group of authors of a specified nationality and from a specified period of history. The legislation even regulates how school districts can choose their literary works, and specifically includes language that prevents books from being read for their political or their cultural value. Indeed, if I was in a district comprised mostly of African American, Hispanic, or Asian American students, I might be offended by a legislative mandate that forces my students to read mostly white authors from before the Civil Rights Movement. In contrast, the Common Core state standards provide suggested titles that are, quote, illustrative texts meant only to show individual titles that are representative of a range of topics and genres. They contain no mandates, definitely not legislative ones, only suggestions proffered by teachers, college professors, and other experts who want students to move beyond the confines of limited expectations. If local control is something you want teachers to gain and maintain, making it illegal for them to make decisions based on community criteria isn't the way to do that. While we're talking about local control, I'd like to conclude my remarks with a few comments on the nature of change and how it takes place at the local level. I appreciate the comments from the superintendent from Upper Arlington, because I could nod to every single one of them and say, yes, that happens to us. As I'm sure you know, change in and of itself is not an easy proposition. It's particularly difficult when it involves such a human complex endeavor like learning. Everything in the learning process starts with standards. Instruction, assessment, grading, reporting, evaluating, all of these flow out of standards. Developing and executing a change process involving all those connected components takes time, lots of time. I know because I've spent the better part of 4 years engaged in that process. To put it simply, it's more than buying textbooks. It's learning what it means to be able to, quote, use precise language and domain-specific vocabulary to inform about or explain the topic, or make sense of problems and persevere in solving them, both of which are Common Core standards that I believe apply to this very situation. You have to know that before you can decide what tools you need. It's knowing how you're going to assess mastery of the knowledge or skill. You have to know that before you can decide what tools you need. It's being able to describe the knowledge and skills your teachers possess. You have to know that before you can decide what tools you need. And the textbook adoptions are simply tool purchases. There's a great deal of study and work involved to even make it to that point. The Common Core state standards were adopted in 2010, and now 4 to 5 years later, we're beginning those assessments with the next generation. This bill requires that assessments be adopted in June of 2017, less than 3 years from today. We have to have standards, and we have to have assessments that are adopted in under 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the sponsor's intent to support student achievement and reduce legislative mandate is admirable. Unfortunately, the proposed legislation accomplishes neither. I urge this committee not to recommend it to your colleagues for passage. Instead, join the thousands of teachers and administrators who are right now, engaged in the most significant educational change process to occur in Ohio in 4 generations. I'm confident that if we stay the course, the students and families of Ohio will reap the benefit of your focus on high expectations and commitment to advancing student achievement.